Hey guys, it's Mark from Ace Tutors, and in this video, I'm going to explain at a high level the idea of confidence intervals. I'm first going to go over what they are, how to construct them, and what they ultimately mean, so let's get right into it. So first off, what even is a confidence interval, and what are they used for? Well, the ultimate goal of confidence intervals is to estimate a certain parameter for a large population, like a mean, proportion, or another measure, using data from a smaller sample. Now, this is really similar to the idea of hypothesis testing, but it differs in one main way. In hypothesis testing, you make hypotheses for what you think that certain population parameter is, and then in the end, you make a specific binary conclusion of whether your hypotheses were right or wrong. If you're testing a single mean, for example, you might want to determine whether the true mean population income for people in the United States is greater than some claim value of $60,000. Or if you're testing the difference between two proportions, you might want to determine whether the cure rate is different between two drugs. These tests will give you a binary answer based on your sample data of whether you can reject the claimed hypothesis, but it doesn't tell you what the real population mean income might actually be, or it doesn't tell you how different the cure rates for the two drugs actually are. And that's exactly where confidence intervals come in. Confidence intervals give you a certain range of values where you're confident the population parameter is. So for the one mean example, you would find a range of what you think the true population mean income actually is. Or for the two proportion example, you would find a range for what you think the true difference in cure rates for the drugs is. In any of the different cases you might come across, the process for creating your confidence interval is the same. No matter what you are trying to estimate, you first take your estimated sample statistic, which could be your sample mean x bar, or sample proportion p hat, or the difference between two means and proportions, and you go left and right some amount to form the range. The amount you go left and right by is called your margin of error. You'll normally see this written as your sample statistic, x bar, p hat, etc., plus or minus the margin of error. But how do we figure out what our margin of error is? Well, our margin of error is broken down into two parts. It's always calculated by taking your critical value multiplied by your standard error. Now let's break down each of these terms and let's start with the standard error. As a reminder, we are ultimately trying to calculate an interval to estimate where we think some population parameter is based on a small sample. The standard error measures how spread out repeat samples would be. For example, if we were estimating one population mean, you can think of the standard error as telling us that if we were to repeatedly take samples of this population, the sample mean we find in each sample will vary this much. The standard error formula for confidence intervals will be different depending on whether you're doing a confidence interval for one mean, one proportion, two means, two proportions, and so on, but they'll always take into account two main things. First, it takes into account the general variability in the data. And second, it takes into account the sample size. To see an example, the standard error formula for one sample means would look like this. Here, sigma is the standard deviation, which is the measure for how much variability there is in the data, and n is our sample size. If the data varies a lot in general, we would be less confident that the sample data we got is close to the real population value. We would get a larger standard deviation value, so we would have a larger standard error value because sigma is in the numerator, and this would produce a larger margin of error, and as a result, our range would be wider to try and encompass the true population parameter. On the other hand, if we have a larger sample size, the law of large numbers says that our sample value gets closer to our population value, so we would have a smaller standard error because n is in the denominator. And this would produce a smaller margin of error, and as a result, our range would be tighter because of it. Okay, next we have the critical value. What a critical value is a standardized value associated with the distribution for a particular sample and population, and it represents how confident we want to be in our interval. These are usually written as z star for a critical z value, or t star for a critical t value, which you may recognize from class. For each confidence interval, we choose how confident we want to be. Some normal ones we typically use are 90%, 95%, and 99% confidence intervals. They represent how confident we are that the true population parameter is within the bounds of the interval. If we want to be more confident in our interval, our critical value and thus our margin of error would have to be larger in order to be that much more confident in our interval. This makes us more confident, but it may be less informative because it means that the true population parameter could be in a wider range. If we wanted a narrower range, we would have to use a smaller critical value to make a smaller margin of error, but then we would be less confident in the result. Okay, that's great, but how do we work this out mathematically? Well, to understand this, let's draw out a typical distribution you would see for these types of problems. We'll use this normal distribution that would be used for z values as an example for now, but you'll also see problems using the t-distribution as well, which I'll discuss more in future videos. This distribution is centered at our sample statistic, which again could be a sample mean, sample proportion, or a difference between two means or proportions. But let's just write out a sample mean x bar as an example. Then if we wanted to construct a 90% confidence interval, we want our bounds to encompass 90% of the area below the distribution. If we wanted to do a 95% confidence interval, then we would want our bounds to encompass 95% of the area, and so forth. But how do we calculate this bound from this distribution? Well, we can either use tables from class or a calculator to find the z or t value that corresponds with the bounds that we want. To see where this comes from using the tables from class, let's use a 95% confidence interval as an example. For a 95% confidence interval where we want the bounds to encompass 95% of the area, that would imply that there is 5% of the area outside of these bounds. Since it's split on the left and right, this would mean that there would be 2.5% outside the bounds to the left and 2.5% on the right, which would be 0.025 as a decimal. Now let's use the tables to find the z value that corresponds to an area of 0.025 to the left of it. Using this table, which gives us the area to the left of any specific z value, we could look in the table for this area of 0.025, which we find by scrolling down here. This corresponds to a z value of negative 1.96 coming from the negative 1.9 row and the 0.06 column. This would mean that for a 95% confidence interval where I'm using the normal distribution, the critical z value would be 1.96, corresponding to the negative and positive side for the bounds. And since the normal distribution is always the same no matter what, that means for all 95% confidence intervals using z, this would be the critical value you would always use. For the 90 and 99% confidence intervals, these would be the z values you would use. If instead you were using the t-distribution and critical t value, then this would be a bit more complex, but I'll dive deeper into that in subsequent videos. Okay, so those are all the parts of confidence intervals at a high level. To calculate them, we take our sample statistics of our sample means or proportions and go plus or minus a critical z or t value times our standard error for our particular problem. This will ultimately give you a certain range for your confidence interval, but what does this interval actually mean? Because this is where you need to be careful. Once they have the interval, many students will say something like there is a 90 or 95 or 99 or whatever % chance or probability that the true population parameter is within the bounds, but this is actually incorrect. Once you have your interval, there is no probability or chance for whether the population parameter is in the interval. It's either in the interval or it's not. There's no chance. The population parameter is some specific value that exists, but we just don't know what it is. Instead, we have to say that we are whatever % confident that the true population parameter is within the bounds. This may seem like a small technicality, but the word confidence implies something different than probability or chance. What this entire process and the idea of confidence actually means is that if we were to repeat our sampling of the population over and over, the interval we calculate will actually encompass the true population parameter whatever % of the time. I know this can seem a little overly complex and silly, but it's a key distinction that stat professors care about. I made an entire video on how exactly to interpret confidence intervals if you want to check that out. Okay, so that's how confidence intervals work at a high level. If this seemed a little too theoretical and vague, don't worry. I'll be posting new videos soon covering all the different types of confidence intervals you will see with plenty of concrete examples. Thanks again for watching, and remember, you have big dreams. Don't let a class get in the way.